Hi. In case you're wondering about the screenshot, my dog, Worm, is a Chinese crested. Talking about Chinese culture today from an email, so obviously Chinese crested dog. All right, anyway, so this is an email from Lane, and Lane writes, I've been in recovery for a few months now, and I'm mostly weight restored. I want to talk and ask a question about comments on weight. In Chinese culture, it is usually socially acceptable to comment on another person's weight. Things like, you look skinnier or you look fatter. When I was extremely underweight, not only did family members and friends comment on it, even random people in the street commented on it. One time, the street vendor literally said, you're too skinny, you need to eat more, and handed me some snacks that she was selling. This was the one and only time I've ever seen that person in my life. Another thing is that the Chinese beauty ideal is literally just as skinny as possible. This made it really easy to justify my weight loss and dieting to my friends and family since they ever didn't care or praise me for my self-control and resulting thinness. Even when I was starving myself, I was suffering severely from malnutrition and very underweight. An 11-year-old girl actually said she wanted to be skinny like me just because she was too fat. Many of my closest friends said they were jealous of my figure. Like, seriously, I was experiencing mass organ failure. Anyway, the point is, I'm at a healthy weight now, which means I no longer receive compliments on my figure. But it also means that people have begun to notice and comment on my weight gain. When my grandpa said I looked fatter, I literally burst into tears. I guess I just want some advice on how to deal with this brutally honest culture that worships weight loss and thinness. I know I can't escape it, and I just hope that I won't receive a comment that triggers me back to relapse. Wow, it sounds harsh. I don't know if it's too far from, say, English or American culture that I've known. I know that in England, I got a number of comments on my weight when I was very underweight, and similar things. I had random people telling me to go eat a burger. To be fair, they're bang on. I just know that's exactly what I actually ended up doing in recovery, was eating a lot of burgers. And so I think that that can be helpful. I actually think that was helpful for me. It wasn't nice at the time, for goodness sake, and it was unhelpful in that at that time I didn't know what was going on with me, and it didn't feel as simple as go and eat a burger. And probably for you, when you got handed those snacks in the street, it didn't feel as simple as just go eat the snacks. But I generally think that the negative reinforcement when we're too underweight is a positive thing, if you can follow that. And I think that it helped me. I had this uncanny way when I was sick of just kind of like my brain would sort of forget that I was sick. Not in, I had all these compulsions that I had to do, but like my brain would kind of assume, say if nobody said to me for a while, you look too underweight, it's like my brain would assume that actually that meant I was fine. And so I found it very helpful in a way, although it was upsetting, when people reminded me that I wasn't actually fine, I looked like shit. That was generally a little bit helpful. But then, there's lots of people that have restrictive eating disorders that aren't even that underweight, so they don't even get that negative reinforcement when they are underweight. So say if somebody starts in a naturally larger body and they suppress their body weight down to what would be an average size body, I don't know, whatever. But they're not going to get people in the street stopping them saying you look like shit, which I did. And so they don't actually even get that negative reinforcement. In fact, all they get is the positive reinforcement. That's a problem. And then for anybody, the positive reinforcement around weight loss is unhelpful. So it's not just Chinese culture, but I imagine that Chinese culture is probably a little bit more harsh around it. Like, I think certainly in my experience in American and English culture is that people are very discriminating against people in larger bodies, but they're just passive aggressive about it, sly about it, yeah. And what is passive aggressive is the whole you'd be healthier in a smaller body bullshit, because there's actually very little evidence around that, sadly. I'm laughing because so many medical doctors buy into that. And so a lot of the time people would just, don't you want to lose weight for your health? When they don't know anything about a person's health. They don't know what's going on inside. That person could be optimally healthy at the weight that they are. But so that stuff really annoys me. But that's what we sort of do in American and English culture. For your health, just want to lose a bit of weight for your health. Whereas from what your email says in Chinese culture, it just might be a bit like, you're too fat, lose weight. sometimes I wish that American culture wasn't quite as passive aggressive. It was a little bit more, actually just say what you think. So that's refreshing. At least then the weight stigma is just out in the open, not trying to be hidden. Either way, hidden or out in the open, it's unhelpful, isn't it? And you can't change the culture, actually. Some of us really try and still can't change the culture. Or at least you can, but it just doesn't happen very fast. It's not going to happen in your lifetime, probably. Well, it might do. Depends how old you are. But let's just say, imagine that the culture is not going to miraculously change in the next couple of years so that everybody is actually accepting of all size bodies. I would love it if you did. Be a magic spell that we could cast on the human race, but it's probably going to take years. It's probably going to take decades for that to change. And I do think the change is coming. But you're going to recover before then, aren't you? You're going to recover a lot before then. So the only thing that you can do is you can control your internal environment. That's actually the only thing that you can control is your internal environment. And what you've got to work out is you've got to work out how to control your emotional reaction when someone is an asshole. You can't control someone else being an asshole. That's just going to exist. You can't control that. You can control your reaction to that. And I know that sounds like it sounds like a really bullshit thing to say because people shouldn't be assholes. But honestly, if you want to fully recover, that's what you have to do. Because you have to work out how to not let assholes trigger you. And you have to work out how to not allow your own brain, which wants any excuse, actually. Your eating disorder brain wants any excuse to say, see, you shouldn't gain any more weight. See, you should restrict food. That's what it's like sitting. It's like what they call like a trapdoor spider. Oh God, that's scary. Trapdoor spider. I don't know anything about trapdoor spiders, but what I envisage is they just wait and then they pounce. That's a bit what like your eating disorder brain is. It's going to wait and it's going to pounce on any excuse to go like, see, shouldn't gain weight. See, shouldn't eat more food. See, you should do more exercise. That's what it's going to do. You have to know, like, this is predictable, isn't it? We know that our eating disorder brain is going to do that. So you have to be a step ahead, or you have to work out how to not let the trapdoor spider pounce when some arsehole says something idiotic. And you can work out how to do that if you intend that and if you plan for it and if you sort of think it through and if you recognize. So what you can do is you can think back to the last time someone said something idiotic about your weight or your weight gain. And then have a think back and see if you can remember what your brain did, what neural pathways it went to, what thoughts did it jump to, what emotions did it jump to, how did you feel? And I'm not telling you to analyze that don't analyze the emotions. I just want you to recognize them so that you can be ready for them, but you know that those ones are going to come. And that's how we rewire that. You wait for the reaction to your brain, or you don't wait for it, but you anticipate the reaction to your brain when someone says something idiotic. And you intercept it and you go, stop it, brain, shut up, move on. This person's an asshole. It's a lot easier said than done until you work out how to do it. And then actually you sort of have a formula for it in your head, how to intercept and how to start to create a different neural pathway or push your thoughts and emotions down to a different track. And then it's actually a pretty standard skill that gets easier and easier and easier the more that you do it. So that's how to neurally rewire your reaction to assholes. All right, a couple of questions here. How did you deal with continuously having to buy food in recovery because you keep eating due to extreme hunger? Well, I had a money spending problem with my eating disorder, Laurie. So for me, it was actually part of my recovery to force myself to spend money, because one of the things that happens when our brains think that resources are scarce. That's what happens when you're not eating enough food. Your brain assumes that resources in the environment are scarce. And so for some of us, we start to get really tight around money, other resources, we don't want to spend it. So for me, part of my rewiring was like, I have to force myself to spend money. I found spending money as stressful as I found eating a lot of food. You know, like the thought of that kind of, it was really difficult for me to spend money. It was actually probably more difficult than eating food. It was probably more along the lines of giving out exercise, spending money. So as part of my personal thing, I had to force myself to do that. That, and the other part of it is that I had orthorexia. I had everything going. that could be to do with an eating disorder, binge eating, like everything apart from I was unable to make myself vomit, and that wasn't due to lack of trying. But anyway, so I had orthorexia as well, which forced me to want to only buy like the healthy brand food, which ironically tends to be more expensive. So I had to work out the balance here of pushing myself to spend a lot of money and not allowing myself to buy the stupidly expensive, healthy marketed food. So for example, my tendency would be to buy like and eat protein bars. And I had to force myself to go like, no, you eat the cheap chocolate bars, eat Snickers and Mars bars. So in a sense, that meant that I was buying cheaper food, which is exactly what I needed to eat, the sort of highly processed cheaper food, and to help myself get over my orthorexia as well. So because I was buying cheaper food, I could buy more of it. And so that's how one of the ways that I did that as well. And so both of those things were good for me, forcing myself to spend more money and forcing myself to buy cheap processed foods that I had all of this judgment about. That was really healthy for me. Okay, so Susan Kim says, as an Asian American, Korean specifically, I would agree that Eastern culture idealizes thinness to the extreme, and I find it's deemed normal. And Susan also writes, how do you follow the rule of unrestricted eating when you have major dental work and cannot mechanically eat without having pain? You know, I don't know because I didn't have that limitation, but what I do know, so I can't answer that specifically because I have not experienced it. I have worked with people who have experienced it. And what I do know is that any obstacle, like you're a smart person. I've never met a person with an eating disorder that was stupid. So any obstacle, we can usually, our brains can do one of two things. Our brains can exaggerate it and turn it into an obstacle, or our brains can work out how to bypass it. And I don't know the specifics, Susan, of your dental work, but I do know that you would be able to work out a way to bypass it so that you are, in fact, eating as unrestricted as you possibly can. And as long as that is your intent, and as long as you are truly doing that, and no one else can judge whether you're truly doing that or not, you are the one, like your brain knows if you're eating as unrestricted as is possible. Your brain knows that. So this is like between you and yourself, if you are truly doing that. And if your intentions are to eat without restriction, and you're doing so to your best ability, then you'll work out how to get around this. If I were you, I would get a Mars bar or something similar, or maybe 5 of them, and I'd put it in a blender with some cream, and maybe some ice cream too, because it's quite warm. And then I'd whirl it all up, and that would be my version of a smoothie. All right, well, I have to go, but I will be back tomorrow.